Welcome on this partly sunny, fairly warm June day to our last workshop of the season. Speaking of heat, of course, we all want to lower our emissions, but does local sourcing guarantee a win in the race to reduce our carbon footprint? Is the lowest carbon route to be found in what's on the menu or where it comes from? We'll be exploring this in today's workshop with Dr. Angela Tregear. ProVeg is a non-profit food awareness organisation with offices in 13 countries. And here in the UK, the School Plates programme aims to make school food healthier, more sustainable, better for the planet, better for the children, and, more affordable for caterers. We work with councils, local authorities, and individual schools, as well as school caterers. And we've turned millions of meals plant-based or meat-free. We now work with a quarter of local authorities in the UK, and 1 million children have, probably more than 1 million now, but we are counting. We've developed these dishes together with our inspirational partners, so they're being enjoyed in schools all over the country. And we encourage the kind of swaps that you can see on your screen now. We do have other comparisons, but this is our tried and trusted because it's such a popular dish. Spaghetti bolognese versus a plant-based spaghetti bolognese. And you can see that the traditional one is not 27% cheaper, but the plant-based one is a lot cheaper. It's 87% lower in saturated fat. It has more than double the fiber, which is so important now that so many children are lacking fiber in their diet, and it causes all sorts of problems. And it has less than 1/3 of the carbon emissions, which is the crucial one to today's workshop. So those are the kinds of swaps that we're encouraging in schools. And as ever, we're here to support you with workshops and recipes and consultations, and we don't charge for our time. So we're just here anytime you need us. And as ever, if you send your menu to us, you might just win an award for it. And if you don't win an award, we'll work with you step by step until you do. So remember to send in your menu so we can work with you towards this. And the recipes we'll be looking at today, that amazing Polly will be cooking up, are the sweet potato summer burger, a fresh tomato and pesto slice, Caribbean style rice and peas, and an ice cold berrylicious or super green smoothie. Just before we kick off, I'll give you one more poll question, which is, are you currently measuring the emissions of your school food service? And if you do, just tell us a bit about it in the chat. And if you don't, tell us that as well. And do you plan to do it in the future if you don't do it already? So I'll just wait for you to finish that one. And as you're finishing up, before we share those latest low carbon, highly nutritious and delicious recipes with you, we're delighted to present Dr. Angela Tregear, who's going to talk to us about low carbon food. And just before she does, I'll tell you the answer to your question. You're generally not planning, you're not, sorry, you're not measuring the emissions of your school food service. I'm sure you are planning to at some point, so this will be relevant to you. Dr. Angela Tregear, Professor of Marketing with specialisms in food, agriculture and the rural environment at the University of Edinburgh. Thank you so much. Handing over to you, Dr. Tregear. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here, and thank you to Polly and Alex and the team for inviting me to make this short presentation on the role that plant-based dishes and menus can play in reducing the carbon footprint of a catering service. So allow me just, first of all, for those of you who don't know me or haven't come across me before, just to add to the very gracious introduction that Alex had just made, a few words about my background. So I have been researching in food and sustainability for most of my career to date. For 5 years, I led research into the sustainability of different types of school catering service as part of the European Strength to Food project. And that led to me co-developing the Meal Analyzer, which is a software and service tool designed to help public caterers to measure their carbon emissions. And from there, I have been helping local authorities and academy trusts to measure and reduce their emissions. And so that brings me to today, where I'm going to be sharing with you some of the insights that we've learned about the carbon emissions in school catering services, and also then to answer the question of what difference plant-based and plant-rich menus play in reducing the carbon emissions of those catering services. So to set the scene, first of all, in a week where there are extreme and unusual weather events taking place again in different parts of the world, we are reminded that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, last year reported to us to say that we need to act now in order to keep within 1.5 degrees of global warming. That is, to keep within the boundaries of a livable planet. Now, the agriculture and food sectors are part of the story of greenhouse gas emissions and contribution to climate change. And in the UK, the food and drink sector has been urged and set a target to reduce its emissions by up to 50% by 2030. Now, catering services are very much part of the food and drink sector. And so the question is, how is it that catering services can get on to that journey of reducing their emissions to that level by that time? So to answer that question, let's look first of all at what are the main causes or sources of carbon emissions in a catering service. And on the next slide, I've got a picture of a simplified version of a catering service supply chain. So we start with the agricultural production and processing of the foods that are purchased and the transportation of these through to the kitchens where the service itself takes place. And then the process completes with a final step of food waste handling and disposal. Now, of all of these different steps in the supply chain, emissions are being produced. But what the research studies show us pretty consistently is that the lion's share of all of the emissions of the whole chain reside in the agricultural production and processing. So up to around 70 to 80% of the total emissions of the whole chain are embodied in the food due to the agricultural production and processing. In contrast, the transportation of these foods typically represents a fairly small proportion of the overall emissions of the chain. The kitchen activities are typically 10 to 20% of the total footprint, whilst food waste handling is something between a small net negative impact to around 15 or 16%, depending on which method of food waste is operated. Now, the key point to take away from this is that the emissions of a catering service supply chain, the total carbon footprint, tend to depend more on which types of foods are purchased to put on the plate, rather than how far those foods have travelled to get there, because transport is a relatively small proportion of the total footprint. Now, just to offer up a bit more illustration of this, on the next slide, I've got some examples of the typical carbon emissions of different foods in kilos of CO2 equivalent per kilo of food. And what we find is that foods like carrots, onions, apples, and oranges are amongst the foods with the lowest carbon intensity, whereas foods like tomatoes and peppers are slightly higher typically. During the season, they're switched between field grown and grown under glass, which can increase the carbon intensity. And then foods like plant proteins like peas, lentils, and chickpeas, again, a little bit higher. They come to us in a processed form, typically, and that adds to a component of carbon emissions. However, even though they are a little bit higher, they are still considerably lower than typical emissions for meats like poultry and pork, and in particular, beef. Now, the values that I have put on the slide here come from a database called Agri-Belize, which is a well-regarded database. Of course, other databases will have different specific values for different food products, depending on the measurement methods that are used. However, across databases, the picture is pretty consistent in showing that the carbon intensity of meats are higher than the carbon intensities of plants and plant protein products. And so what are some of the reasons why we find that pretty consistent result? Well, there's three that I've pulled together on this slide here. So the first reason is that ruminant animals, so that's animals that chew the cud, such as cattle, sheep, and goats, produce methane as part of their digestive system. And methane is a highly potent greenhouse gas with emissions several times in excess of carbon dioxide. Also, animal wastes and manures, although important for soil fertility as part of an ecosystem, nevertheless do emit potent greenhouse gases as well, particularly when they are produced in excess and their application isn't handled appropriately. And then there's also a basic efficiency argument, which is that increased energy and inputs are required to produce meat, compared with the inputs and energy required to produce plants or plant proteins directly for human consumption. Now, it is important to say that the science is evolving and there are debates about the contribution of livestock farming to ecosystems and indeed the carbon intensities. However, the weight of evidence does show that the carbon intensity of meats is typically higher than that of plants and plant proteins. So that provides a bit of background and illustration. What does this all mean for the emissions of a typical school catering service, though? What are the emissions that we see for services as they operate today in the UK? So for the next slide, I've drawn together the insights that we've gained from measuring the emissions of over 20 services across the UK over the last few years. And what I have done is I've pulled together what the carbon intensity of these services are. So I've put it in this diagram, and apologies for the slightly small font. I hope that everybody can see that. But suffice to say, the yellow line at the top shows the average carbon intensity of a UK school catering service averaged across the 20 that we've studied. And you can see there the value of 3.44. Now, what that essentially means is that for every kilo of food served on average in UK school catering on this sample, just under 3.5 kilos of carbon dioxide equivalent is produced. However, when we look at the individual carbon intensities of all of the individual cases, you can see that there's quite a lot of variation around that. So, for example, case 15 at the top here with an intensity of 5.21. Well, in that service, the emissions are over 5 times the weight of the physical weight of the food served. Whilst case 10 at the bottom here with an intensity value of 1.67, in that service, the emissions are less than double the weight of the food served. So there really is quite a big variation and a big difference. And so the question is, well, what is it that these case services at the bottom are doing differently to mean that their emissions intensity is so low? There's a number of things, but I want to tell you about two in particular today. So two key differences between the high and low carbon services that we've analysed in our research to date. Now, the first of these is the differences in the proportions of the foods that are purchased by these different services. So one of the things that we are able to do in our analysis is to show the breakdown of which foods are purchased and in what proportion to each other in the whole procurement. And so what I've got in these two pie chart diagrams here is a colour-coded breakdown of different food types purchased. So the light blue is dairy, the dark green segment is the fruit and veg, dark blue is fish, yellow is grocery items, bread, pasta, oils, that kind of thing. The dark red is red meat, which is almost entirely beef. And the pink is other meat, which is comprised of pork, poultry, and a little bit of plant-based alternative as well. What you can see by comparing the top pie with the bottom pie is that there's really quite a big difference in which foods are being purchased and in what proportion. So in that highest carbon service, that was case 15 at the top, you can see that there is quite a big proportion of meat products that are being purchased, and also dairy and fish. Whereas only just over a third of the total food that is purchased by weight is fruit and vegetables. Compare that with the low carbon service, so that's case 2 in our example. Then you can see that there's a much greater proportion of fruit and vegetables is purchased relative to the other items. And in addition to that being in high proportion, in that service, there's also a big proportion of that fruit and veg, which is fresh, which is seasonal and field grown. In contrast, there's modest proportions of processed dairy products and small proportions of high quality meat. So this is one key difference that explains why services have lower carbon emissions than others. The second key difference, and it is linked to the first, is in the decisions that are made at the recipe design stage within the service, and in particular, the role played by plant-rich recipes. And the example that I'm going to show to illustrate this leads on very well from Alex's introduction, where she was talking about the classic spaghetti bolognese recipe, which is a dish that we find appears very regularly in school menus. It's very popular. And I want to show you some of the differences that are made by changing the components of the recipe and the ingredients. So if we take a classic bolognese recipe that is beef-based, according to our analysis, we find that that has a very high carbon intensity, as indicated by the red colour coding on our labelling. If one were to take that recipe and do a straight swap between the beef and a plant substitute, then that and all the other ingredients would remain the same. That would bring down the carbon intensity of that recipe quite considerably to a medium level, as indicated by the yellow in our labelling scheme. However, if one were to rewrite the recipe or redevise the recipe from scratch, basing the recipe around either unprocessed or lightly processed plant proteins and vegetables, then more carbon reductions are possible. Now, as can be shown by our green labelling scheme here. Now, this particular recipe, I believe it is from the school plates. It may not necessarily be exactly the same one that Alex was referring to in our introduction, but it certainly is one that is linked to the school plates cookbook. And it serves to show that there is a carbon reduction possibility from doing this kind of recipe revision. Now, the last thing that I wanted to say was that it might look that the difference between the medium intensity recipe and the low one is a matter of a few grams of carbon on a dish by dish basis. And does that really translate into big reductions when you start multiplying that up across a whole service, delivering thousands or tens of thousands of meals over a month or a term? And to answer that question, I'd like to just share with you some of the results of analysis that we have recently completed with our county council, which I'm calling here Hillshire. This is a small county council that operates a service to 26 primary schools, and they made a policy change in their menus from 2022-23 to 23-24. So in 22-23, they basically had one daily hot option offered in their menus, and all of those options were meat-based except for one dish in the menu cycle, which happened to be a margherita pizza. However, in 23-24, they introduced a daily plant-based option alongside the meat-based one for the whole menu cycle. And what we did in our analysis was we then measured what the uptake was across a sample period of weeks across those different options in the full menu cycle. And we were able to calculate that there had been a reduction in the carbon intensity of the whole service of 19%. So this is really quite a sizable reduction overall. So the key point to make is that even small adjustments to recipes can translate into quite sizable reductions overall. So I'll wrap up now and just say in conclusion that overall the carbon footprint of a catering service does depend more on the types of foods which are purchased rather than where the foods come from. And within that, plant-rich menus can indeed help to reduce carbon emissions. We should also bear in mind that there are other key sources of reductions, one being encouraging pupils to shift towards plant-based options rather than just having them on the menu, but also changes in food waste disposal method and energy efficiency in kitchens can also help to reduce emissions as well. So I'll finish there. My contact details and details about meal analyzer on the slide there if anybody wishes to follow up, or indeed if you want to ask any questions. But for now, I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tregear. That's absolutely fantastic to hear. It's such in-depth information from such an expert. We're very lucky. I feel as if we've got a hotline to lots of years of research and trawling through data, and it's really helpful for everyone to hear. So as you mentioned, if anyone has questions, just let us know. We'll forward them on and have an expert answer for you. And now it's time to hand over to our wonderful chef trainer and coordinator for Scotland and Northern Ireland. I see we have a Northern Ireland. Joan, welcome. So also coordinator for Northern Ireland and Scotland, Polly Higginson, with her recipes. Thanks, Polly.
Oh, thanks, Alex, and thank you so much, Angela. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the online cookery workshop. I'm going to demonstrate 4 new recipes for you today, and I'm also really excited to show you. I've got here, in case you haven't heard the news yet, that we've got our new School Plates 2 recipes finally finished. We've been working on it the past year, and we've got I'll just give it a quick flick so you can see some of the beautiful images and colours. So 35 new plant-based recipes aimed at primary school children. These are really simple, cost-effective, delicious recipes, and we've demonstrated a lot of them in the workshop this past year. So you can go onto our website and you can download it and get yourself a copy and start getting lots of ideas for your next menu cycles of plant-based dishes that you can put on your menu. And hearing from Angela's presentation, you can see the importance of doing that and the huge impact that you can have by introducing more of those dishes. But today we're going to do 4 brand new recipes, so they're not in our recipe guide, but if you'd like any of them after the workshop, then please just drop us an email. So they've got a kind of summary end of term feel to them, but they could of course be on menus all year round. So the first dish that I'm going to make is our sweet potato summer burger. And this is, we've got a burger recipe, a plant power burger in School Plates 1, and this is a slight evolution of it. So I'm going to show you that today. So here in my mixing bowl, I've got sweet potato, I've got some crushed chickpeas, and I've got breadcrumbs. So that's going to kind of be the base. I'm going to season it up. So here you can see I've got some smoked paprika. I've got nutritional yeast, which will kind of fortify and also add a delicious flavour to the burgers. And I've got some garlic and onion granules as well. So that's all going to go in. And then I'm going to use some tofu as well. So just bring that here. This is extra firm tofu. And I've been using it in quite a few of the workshops this year. And so just to show you how to kind of prepare it, it's always the same, always pressing it to get any extra liquid out. You can see quite a lot is coming out. And we're huge fans of using tofu. It's a very minimally processed plant protein, and it's just really, really versatile. And today I'm going to grate it, and we've crumbled it, we've cooked it in nuggets and done all different kinds of things with it. But I'm going to use this in the burger recipe today. And just push that all through, so it's breaking it down. Okay.
Well, I jump in with a tofu fact.
Yeah, yes, please, Alex.
The carbon footprint of tofu ideally sits around 10% that of chicken. So that's interesting. I found that on the Klima website. So if anyone needs that reference, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I've got tofu, sweet potato, chickpeas. I'm going to add in some ground flaxseed, which is going to also help to kind of bind the burgers together. And I've ground that myself. So flax seeds, again, are a really great versatile ingredient and really, really nutritious. These are the whole seeds. And I just ground it myself in a strong spice grinder. So you get the kind of meal. And yeah, that is going to go in and help my burgers kind of bind together. I'm going to add some tomato puree. So you could really, add all different kinds of seasonings, spices and things to it. But we're just going to keep it quite kind of simple today. And then all of this together, and I'm just going to use my hands and squidge it all together. Now, we generally, a lot of our recipes that we do are kind of one pot recipes, you know, things that can be batch cooked all together, really for speed, because we know that those are the kind of dishes that are really popular. This is something that needs to be shaped individually. But I hope you'll see today that it is fairly quick, and these will freeze really well. And some of our partners have the means of like production kitchens and things where they're able to kind of make these burgers and things on scale. So it was also a recipe aimed at people that have that kind of infrastructure as well. But like I said, I hope this shows that these are fairly quick to make too. So that's our burger mix all together. And then I'm going to just grab my oven tray. And I made these earlier, and I would weigh them into kind of 90-gram balls, just really easy to shape by hand, or you could do it in a with a ring, or if you're very lucky and you have your own burger pressing machine, then you probably could just put this in and make them. So they're
beautiful, and they're 32p a portion.
Yeah,
it's very good.
Really good value, and when they're really, really tasty, really nutritious. The thinking too was to use 50-50 tofu and chickpeas for the kind of protein element, so you're kind of reducing, your costs, as tofu is a more expensive ingredient. I'll just shape 4 there, and and I guess also the carbon, kind of the footprint of it as well. And like Angela mentioned, like using, even within the plant world, they have different levels of carbon as well. So where we use something that's slightly higher, it's great that if it can be cut as well with something that is very, very low. So there are burgers, and then I'll just lightly brush them with oil, and then they'll go into an oven at 200 degrees for 20 minutes, and they'll get baked 10 minutes on one side and flipped 10 minutes on the other. So that's them going in. But because it's a workshop and the magic of being able to play around with timings, I've got some that I made earlier that I will just bring them now to show you how they've come out. So they're really sturdy, which is important. You don't want something that's going to crumble. It holds its shape really, really well. I'll break it inside because sometimes people quite like to see that texture as well. So it's really nice, and like the tofu blends through really, really well, and the chickpea and the sweet potato. So it's got a great texture, and then
great bite, Polly, a nice bite to it, right?
It's got a good bite to it, it does. And I've got here just the traditional kind of burger style. So I've got some homemade, just simple potato wedges, some cucumber, and then we'll pop our burger in. I've got a little squirt of ketchup here, which we know we all love. It makes the burger experience. So that's in there. So there we go. That's our summer sweet potato burger for our first dish. So I'll pop that here to the side, and I think we're going to have our next poll question, Alex.
You've got it. Poll question number 2. Do you prioritise sourcing local produce on your school menu? And if you do, then which ingredients do you tend to focus on? You've got to choose one, I'm afraid. If you're anything like me, you kind of hover between several choices on these. If you had to choose one ingredient, which one would it be for local sourced ingredients? Here we have the answers. Everybody does prioritise sourcing local produce. It's a really popular decision to make. And it says here that the ingredients that everybody focuses on are 100% vegetables. Everyone wants to have locally sourced vegetables, which is really interesting to us. Yeah, I wonder whether you think that it's an attractive thing to mention as well on a menu, because those of you who are here today, just pop a comment on if you think it sounds nice, if you've got Pembrokeshire potatoes or similar to that, you know, vegetable that comes from somewhere. Do you put that in? Back to you, Polly.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. This next recipe is all about really showing off some amazing seasonal vegetables, but it's something that you can kind of adapt throughout the year. So it's a recipe that is in the new School Plates 2 recipes. It's our plant power pesto, which I made a few workshops ago, and we just served it with pasta, like a warm pasta dish, but it could also be a pasta salad. But it could also be used in this pesto and tomato summer tart, that you could rotate the vegetables, using tomatoes as a kind of summer vegetable. But yeah, it could be squash or pumpkin or something in autumn and winter. So I'm going to just show you again the pesto. So in here, I've just blanched broccoli, peas and spinach. So 100 grams of each. I've then got here adding in pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds and nutritional yeast and garlic powder. So they're all going to go in. And yeah, we're using the seeds. You know, traditionally pesto is with nuts. So we're using the seeds again to give texture and again, really nutritious, and a different kind of you know, another kind of plant as well to get into children's diets. And I'm juicing a lemon just to kind of season it with. So this is, yeah, our pesto.
So much goodness in that.
Yeah, it's
Is it time yet? Is it time for a pea fact?
Yeah, go for it, Alex.
I can't help it. I can't help it. Whilst you're mixing there,
I'm going to whisk this up.
Okay.
So it's the perfect time.
Here we go. This is my moment.
Okay.
Okay. The UK is 90% self-sufficient in pea production. So you are helping to support British farmers and industry. There are currently 18 farmer groups containing 700 British pea growers along the east coast of the UK, from Essex to north of Dundee. So that's interesting. And broccoli might come from West Sussex and Hampshire. You might have Lincolnshire spinach included in your mix. So they are these ingredients are actually grown in the UK, a lot of them. Pumpkin seeds are also grown in Essex. You can find sunflower seeds grown in the UK in Surrey, Hertfordshire and Kent. So it might be that what you're using can be locally sourced. Not always, but it might be. Always exciting to add to the description. So I think everyone's very excited that we are 90% self-sufficient in pea production in the UK.
Yeah, that was an amazing
more pea
fact. I think we've got our really vibrant pesto. So just a note, in the recipe, it's 250 mils of water, but we've just reduced it slightly in this one to 100 mils, just so it's not as runny, I guess, as a pesto. It's going to go through pasta. Oh, my pastry's a little bit stuck. And then I'm just using a sheet of puff pastry. This is just made with oil. It's not butter puff pastry. And we use it in occasionally in our school plates recipes. It's something, again, that we see on menus quite a lot, like a tart or a quiche, or a pie or a sausage roll kind of thing. So we always like to have our own version as well. And this recipe would work really well on a pizza base as well. So just as another alternative, we all know the popularity of pizza on UK school menus, probably all over Europe. So I'm going to just spread this pesto over the pastry. It's quite thick. And you want to make sure you can see that you use it all. And basically it's just got a really lovely, flavour. The nutritional yeast gives it that cheesiness. The seeds, they blend through, they just give it a good texture. And then it's got all of those green vegetables in. So that's it spread out. And then I've got here cherry tomatoes with a little bit of oil on them. And then I'm just going to arrange whatever, like I said, it could be any vegetables over the top. And I'm taking, I've chosen cherry tomatoes. I mean, they're small and a little bit fiddly, but you could use something bigger. So you then just cover the tart, and then oven at 200 degrees again, and again it will be another, similar to the burgers, 20 minutes in the oven. I'm just going to pop mine in there, but then the magic.
This is the magic.
This is one I made earlier, so that's it, all lovely
beautiful.
Crispy pastry and cooked tomatoes. And you still get a nice green, actually. I had the tests that I did, I reheated this and things as well, and it still had a really nice green colour. And it's really, really tasty. It's, as I said, it's quite like pizza-like, and the green vegetables have quite a mild taste, but just give a really, really nice texture as well. So that is our fresh tomato and pesto slice. So I'll cut up a slice of that at the end.
Lovely. And it's such a great sneaky way of getting broccoli, peas and spinach.
I was pleased with it, Alex. I have to say, really pleased.
Great.
Shall we go to the next poll question?
Poll question number 3. Do you highlight whether a dish is locally sourced or has locally sourced ingredients on your school menu? Yes or no? And then just pop us some comments in the chat. I suppose it's really about, we know that you find it important, but do you find it important to share with school communities as well, that the links that you've got going? Okay, that's interesting. So everyone says no, they don't highlight that at the moment. So it's not something that they highlight in the dish description or when communicating with parents. Although we know it's really important to you, so you've kept that sort of a little bit quiet. And might be something you might like to include at some point, because it's another way of describing it, and it's a way of closing that little loop, isn't it, between, in a way, food education with the community as well. So wonderful that you're doing it already. On to the next one, Polly. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so the next dish is Caribbean style rice and peas. So this is traditional Caribbean dish that we adapting slightly, but it could be, I'm serving it today as a main course, but it also just works really nicely as a side dish, as a rice on the side. You could be serving some crispy tofu fingers with it, or something. It's a very humble dish with its ingredients, and really high in fibre, high in protein as well. So again, just the kind of dishes that you would like to have more of on school menus. So in my pan over here, just starting off, I've got a large onion that I've just been cooking down. So pop that on there. And I've got some fresh garlic going in. Smells really nice. And then the spices and the seasoning. So I've got dried thyme. I've got allspice, which, you know, is quite, you know, it's unique. We use it a lot in Britain in baking and kind of at Christmas and things, but it's a really, yeah, it's a strong flavour, but it is distinctive of this dish. And then allspice, which, sorry, not allspice, just a mixed seasoning that's got paprika, cumin, onion powder, garlic granules. So that's our spices and herbs that are going to go into the base. It smells really lovely, and it is just quite a gentle dish. So I'm going to just get all those lovely cooking together, frying off nice and lightly together. And then here I've got the stars of the show. I've got kidney beans. So this is the kind of the pea part, but it's actually always beans that are used in this dish. So kidney beans, and then here I've got they're called Carlin peas. They're produced by Hodmedods, who we talk about or have mentioned quite a lot in these workshops, who are growers of UK pulses. And these used to be very kind of popular pea that was grown in England that they are doing a lot of work to bring back. And I was curious to try it. And they look a little bit like chickpeas, but they have a really creamy, smooth texture. They're delicious. So I'm going to go half and half in this recipe, but you could, of course, just go all kidney beans, or you could do kidney beans and brown lentils, or use another kind of bean like broad beans, frozen broad beans. So I'm going to pop those in pots. And then I've got brown rice here that I've washed and weighed out. Then that goes. And then a tin of coconut milk. So we use light coconut milk in our recipes, just that's lower in fat for the school food standards. So in that goes a tin of coconut milk. And then you mix that, and then you top with water so that it's all just covered. I've got 700 mils of water, and then it's one of those wonderful dishes that you put the lid on, you pop the timer on. I'm just going to bring it in there. So I've got beans, coconut and rice, and as you can see, quite a bit, maybe, you know, 1 or 2 centimeters of water over the top. Back onto the heat.
And go and read a novel.
Yeah. Go and have a cup of tea for 20 minutes and then come back and your dish is ready. So pop the lid on. I'm going to let that cook away. And obviously we don't have about 20 minutes. So again, I've got one that I've prepared earlier. I'll just show it to you as a main course. Our plate. A smaller batch that I made this morning. So you just got lovely spiced, fragrant rice enriched with the coconut milk and the beans and the peas. And I'm just going to put a little bit of fresh coriander in there as well. And it's just really, as I said, tasty, gentle, fragrant rice dish. It's going onto the plate, and then I'm going to serve mine with, I've got some of our coleslaw, which is from School Plates Recipes 1. So it's red cabbage and carrot and a little bit of plant mayonnaise. It's a lovely spoonful of that. And a corn on there.
Oh,
So there we are, our lovely Caribbean style rice.
delicious, doesn't it?
Go.
Oh, that's a good question. Mandy has asked about finding nutritional yeast. Where did you get your ingredients from? Says Mandy.
So I just got it in the supermarket in, I think generally in most large supermarkets you can get it and you can get it online. But I haven't actually checked about breaks and things if they supply it. If you're buying larger quantities of it, but it is available kind of in supermarkets at the moment.
I have seen huge kind of pots of it online, but I don't know exactly where they come from either.
Yeah.
Anyone knows? Pop it in the chat.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, and our final recipe is a dessert recipe, something kind of perfect, for children to have at the end of the meal. We always try and have yogurt and fruit desserts. And so this one is exactly hit the nail on the head there. We've got a berrylicious summer smoothie. And we've also got a super green ice lolly as well. But the base of both of these recipes is exactly the same. And then you can rotate fruit and vegetables, again, at different times of the year, blending them together. And yeah, just giving children that kind of extra fibre and fun dessert. And the smoothie being, really, really simple, just whiz it all together and then store it in the fridge for a couple of hours so it's really nice and cold. Again, a bit of a treat, like in the summer term, to have something like that for dessert. Or if you have large freezers, which we know like a lot of schools do, then purchasing the ice lolly molds, or even just going with a simple paper cup and wooden stick, and making your own as well. Really fun, and children really go crazy for that kind of thing at the end of their meal. So the berrylicious one, I've got 2 bananas. I've got frozen summer berries, strawberries, blackcurrants, blackberries, and then I've also got an equal quantity of raw grated beetroot as well, which is another really sweet ingredient and keeps the cost of the berries down. Beetroots are always really, really good value, and again just gets that kind of plant diversity. A great place. We've got a couple of recipes where we use beetroot in dessert. And then here I've got some chopped dates, which will go in for a little bit of sweetness, and then a jug of plant yogurt and plant milk as well, so that will go in. And then I did this bit earlier as well, whiz it all up. I won't do any more stick blending, but just to show you here this amazing colour. Ta-da! Lovely purple.
Doesn't that look summery?
Really vibrant. So to be served, as a smoothie, I think this recipe makes enough for 10 little glasses. And then I'm just going to show you as well in the freezer. I froze it as I did so I did exactly the same yogurt, milk, 2 bananas, and dates, but instead I used pear and spinach and these little molds, and there you've got like a really nice bright green lolly as well.
You've earned it. She's earned it, hasn't she?
I will enjoy that after the workshop. So yeah, really colourful and really simple, and great thing to put on the menu for dessert. So yeah, there we are. I'll bring everything to the front. Our smoothie, burger, where did I put the rice and peas, and I'll slide up the top while we could do the last poll question.
Okay. They look beautiful. Everybody, has this workshop changed your understanding of the carbon footprint of school food? Do comment in the chat and let us know. Yes, everybody's understanding of the carbon footprint of school food has been changed by this workshop. So thanks to Dr. Angela Tregear for that amazing covering of that issue and how we can lower the carbon footprint of school food. As Polly's chopping that up, it just looks delicious. As a result of today's workshop, which recipes are you most likely to try? Let us know what your favourites were or what you like the look of, or perhaps it's what fits in the time you've got that you know your children might enjoy. Okay, and it's a tie between the sweet potato summer burger and the Caribbean style rice and peas. Second on the list are both equally the tomato and pesto slice and the ice cold smoothies. Thank you. Oh, it looks beautiful, Polly.
Thanks. I just bring it up so you can see it a bit closer. But there we go. That's a slice of the tart as well.
Pretty.
So there we go. That's all our recipes.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
And as ever, we have another event coming up, but the next one of these is on the September the 18th, isn't it, Polly? The 18th of September.
We're breaking for the summer holidays. So yeah, we'll be back in September with more guest speakers and new recipes for you.
But don't leave it until then to be friendly. Come along to our School Plates Partners Network event, which is on the 26th of June, coming up very soon, from 3 to 4 p.m. So we hope to see you there. Just drop us an email if you'd like an invitation, and we'd love to see you at that network event where you can ask questions and chat with other school caterers just to see how you're doing with the various recipes, how you're managing, how do you interpret the suggestions we have and what your favorite recipes are. It's a really good way to get some peer-to-peer support, and they're very successful, our Partners Network events, and they're very regular as well. So otherwise, we will see you after your summer break. Any other questions? Michael, Mandy, I'm glad you've enjoyed these webinars. Thank you so much. And do download the new recipe book. I think that we've put the link in the chat a little bit further up. You can find that link. Otherwise, just head on over to our website and you'll find those there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.